The number two. The number two. What does the number two represent? I have no clue. Now, the number two represents a lot of things, multiple things. I tried getting more facts from Google, but Google, a lot of people that is publishing on Google, they aren't really aware of what the number two is. So, quote me on this, and believe me. The number two represents, what I can agree to, number two represents duality. Like when it comes to direction and creation, like when you creating, it means, the number two means a combination of things. So positive, negative, good and bad. It means combining. For example, the video game Army of Two. The main characters are two characters, but you notice they aren't separated. Okay, the two characters look the same because the direction had to be in a mode of duality. All right, so the characters, they aren't in the military, okay, but they are wearing the same thing and they are carrying the same thing. They sound the same. They almost look the same because it makes the whole game flow with duality. So when they was creating Army of Two, they was put in a perspective of, okay, they have to work together. Okay, so mentally, the number two represents duality. So when you're mentally thinking about something, number two, it has to be both of them. Okay, it can't be one or the other. Now this can get confusing. Number two can get confusing, and I'll explain why. Spiritually, the number two represents consideration. Like you have no clue what is going on. Okay, so when you look at the time, okay, spiritually, when you look at the time and it's 2 o'clock, then you realize, oh wow, I'm trying to consider something. Okay, I'm trying to consider what is going on. Okay, so it's kind of like a question mark. All right, when you speak of the number two, there are multiple meanings, but spiritually, like symbolically, okay, like symbolically, you want to think of the number two as a question mark. Okay, you're considering what should I do? Should I do this? Should I do that? Okay. And the last thing I want to get at is the representation of the vision. And this means on a physical scheme, on a physical scale. All right, so the number two will represent the vision actually on the physical scale. So when you look at a perspective of things, so when you look at things and you see two of them, okay, the perspective is one or the other. Okay, when God made Adam and Eve, he made one and then he made the other. Okay, he didn't make, it wasn't like he made he didn't make twins that was stuck together. Okay, he made Adam, he made Eve. And that's the physical perspective of the number two. Okay, so when you're looking at objects, okay, what exists in the real world, physically, you want to think about the number two as division. You have to think of one or the other. All right. Now listen closely, because I just said duality. Right? I just said the number two means duality. working together, but that's only on a mode of creation. So like, say you wanted to draw an apple and an orange, right? You're drawing an apple and an orange, but when you're making it into a reality, of course you gotta draw the apple first and then draw the orange, or vice versa. Okay, so physically, but when you're thinking about number two, you have to think of them together before dividing. Okay, and spiritually, if you want to be like, okay, like I said, the number one means leadership, but it means leadership mentally, but on the spiritual scheme, number one means God. Okay, number one means the creator. Number one means, stuff like that. So spiritually, the number two, when you think about the number two, you're thinking about consideration. Okay, question mark. All right, you're like, what does this mean? You're trying to figure out, like, why am I seeing the number two? Why is two things appearing? You're trying to figure out what's the message behind number two. The message behind number two would be you're trying to consider something. Like, you're trying to figure out something. Now, hopefully you get that, because when I say, okay, it's 2 o'clock, what does that mean? Okay, it's a message. If you just seen 2 o'clock, boom, you know what? You have to consider something. Okay, if it's two birds flying right next to you, what does that mean? What is God trying to tell me? All right, so that's the message behind it. When you're creating something, or when you're watching a creation, like, movies, video games, stuff like that, they had to put two things there in a mode of duality. So they had to think about both of them there before they put it there. So once it's there, once it's actually there in the physical world, all right, then you're thinking about one or the other. You can't think about, you can't see two things and try to separate. You can't see two things and try to separate them, but you can mentally separate two things. All right, the number two is very technical. It means multiple things. So I'm breaking it down to you just in case you Google, like, what does this mean? I'm seeing all of this. What does it mean? Look, that's what it means. The number two. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube. I'll be making vlogs. This is vlog number 41. I'll be making vlogs all my life. And if you subscribe, make sure you upload a profile pic. And maybe like, comment, share. Tell me what I should post. Okay? It's RJRockfilmz. That's the number two. I'm out.